Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started with a continuation of our Psalm study. There are printouts on the back in case you didn't get one, or if you want one. We'll be in Psalm 94 tonight. If you want to turn there, if you did not get a printout, that'll be helpful. We'll start this the way we have many of these classes. We will read the psalm, and then I'll give you a couple minutes to make some notes. Just some guidance as we're thinking through the two things to look for easily when we read this through the first time will be to look for big themes. I think there are some small themes for sure. You won't have time to take note of every one of those because there's kind of like quick hits. So focus on trying to see the big theme of what the psalmist is talking about. But then also there's some structural things that you could take note of as well. So just look for, like I said, big themes. I think the biggest theme will stand out pretty quickly. But then also, what structural things do you notice about the psalm as well? And those will be the first two things that we talk about. All right, let's read Psalm 94. O Lord, God of vengeance, shine forth. Rise up, O judge of the earth. Repay to the proud what they deserve. O Lord, how long shall the wicked exult? They pour out their arrogant words. All the evildoers boast. They crush your people, O Lord, and afflict your heritage. They kill the widow and the sojourner and murder the fatherless. And they say, the Lord does not see. The God of Jacob does not perceive. Understand, O dullest of the people, fools, when will you be wise? He who planted the ear, does he not hear? He who formed the eye, does he not see? He who disciplines the nations, does he not rebuke? He who teaches man knowledge, the Lord knows the thoughts of man, that they are but a breath. Blessed is the man whom you discipline, O Lord, and whom you teach out of your law, to give him rest from days of trouble, until a pit is dug for the wicked. For the Lord will not forsake his people. He will not abandon his heritage. For justice will return to the righteous, and the upright in heart will follow it. Who rises up for me against the wicked? Who stands up for me against the evildoers? If the Lord had not been my help, my soul would soon have lived in the land of silence. When I thought, my foot slips. Your steadfast love, O Lord, held me up. When the cares of my heart are many, your consolations cheer my soul. Can wicked rulers be allied with you, those who frame injustice by statute? They band together against the life of the righteous and condemn the innocent to death. But the Lord has become my stronghold, and my God, the rock of my refuge. He will bring back on them their iniquity and wipe them out for their wickedness. The Lord our God will wipe them out. All right, take a couple minutes and make a few notes about big things that you see, and notice maybe some structural things or devices you see the author using. All right. I think the biggest theme should pop out at you pretty quick. What's the big theme of this psalm? What does the psalmist long for? Justice. All right, Alan, tell us one verse where you get that from. Not all the verses, just one.
Just one?
Yeah, just one.
They crush the people, Lord, and afflict your heritage.
Okay, so they crush your people, O Lord, and afflict your heritage. I don't think that's him crying out for justice yet. I think that's part of a section we'll talk about in a minute. He's crying out for justice. Chip, what were you going to say? One verse. All right, verse 2. Rise up, O judge of the earth. Repay what they deserve. Great. That's one. What's another?
Verse 1.
Yeah, verse 1. He says, God of vengeance, and he doesn't just say it once, he says it twice. God of vengeance, shine forth. Great. Where else do you see judgment or justice coming up in the psalm? Yeah, verse 15, justice will return to the righteous. And if you look just a little bit before that, in verse 13, what is he calling for? A pit. Talks about the pit that's going to be dug for these guys. They're going to be judged, and when they're judged, the only thing that makes sense to happen to them is to dig a hole in the ground and throw them in it. Great. I think there's at least one other, maybe two others. What did you say, David? Yeah, 23. Wipe them out. He's not mincing words here, people. He knows exactly what he thinks should happen. So from top to bottom, from verse 1, O God of vengeance, shine forth, to verse 23, wipe them out, wipe them out. This psalm is about the psalmist wanting vengeance from that God will deliver that vengeance. And why does he want that? Say it louder, Alan.
Verse 5.
Verse 5, that's a great verse, Alan.
People are being afflicted.
Yeah, so these people are being afflicted. So really when you look at 4 through 7, you could see that all as one structure. What repeated words could bring your eye to that as a section? They. Yeah, so whenever we're reading, when we're trying to look for things that the author thinks is important, how they're trying to draw attention, repeated words are often the most important thing to look for. And so when I think about the structure of this psalm, in one of the ways I thought about it, to me, 4 through 7 is what I call the indictment. They pour out their arrogant words, and then all the evildoers boast. They crush your people, they afflict your heritage. They kill the widow and the sojourner and murder the fatherless. And then, what do they say? Not just where's God, they say something worse than that.
The Lord doesn't see.
The Lord is blind. He doesn't even see. It's not even that he doesn't even see. Even if he saw, he doesn't understand. Not that he doesn't care. That's a different charge. This charge is them saying, it's not that he doesn't care. He doesn't even understand. The God doesn't even perceive. So you would say 4, 5, 6, those are all, you might say, sins or actions that they're taking. Whereas 7 is worse than that, in my opinion. 7 is blasphemy. They are speaking ill of the Father. They're not just saying, yeah, we like to oppress some people, we steal from the poor, sometimes we kill those people who are traveling through the land of sojourner. I know we were told in the Torah that we should care for them, that we're supposed to take care of them and the widows and the fatherless. That's bad. That's really bad. But they don't just do bad things. They speak ill of God as they do them. And so for that reason, the psalmist is crying out for vengeance on behalf of the people, but also he's talking about it on behalf of God, that God needs to punish these people for what they are saying about him. Great. What other themes do you guys see through this psalm? Any others? Barry, what you got?
Well, I think it's interesting that he gives an argument against, in verse 8 through 11, an argument against these wicked people who say that God doesn't see. And he gives a great argument. He says, how could you say that the one who actually made your ear and planted on your head couldn't hear what you're doing and couldn't see what you're doing and doesn't know what you're doing? It's just silliness.
Yeah, it's one of the things I identified as a theme or section is that he's responding. They've made these outlandish claims about God, and he's telling them, how could you even believe that? Like, that doesn't even make sense. That would be like the Israelites saying the Lord brought us out into the wilderness to die. I mean, he doesn't say that, but I mean, it's akin to how crazy that was the multiple times that the Israelites, when in Sinai, and they're saying things like, well, God must have brought us out of Egypt because He wanted us to die here instead of there. Like that, it's not even, that doesn't even make sense when you kind of think about it logically. Why would God go to a bunch of effort to kill you when He already had people that were taking care of that job for Him? This doesn't make sense. Well, this same God who you think doesn't understand and doesn't hear, He made all the mechanisms, all the senses that you have, He gave them to you. He knows knowledge. He gives knowledge that you think He doesn't know. Franco.
It also seems that He states that without God, your knowledge and your thoughts are futile. Like you cannot think well without God.
Yes.
It seems like your thoughts are just vague.
Yeah, you're acting as though you can know separate from God, yet God gave you the knowledge. And how would that make sense? How would that matter for you to have that knowledge without Him? Chip?
I think one of the themes that starts in verse 12, probably goes through verse 15, but at least it starts in verse 12, is about discipline. Kind of very sermon on Sunday night about Job, the section we were in, the benefits of discipline, the benefits of suffering. We often see it as an answer to prayer. That's what Barry was talking about. And oftentimes when we're being trained, we don't often consider it pleasant.
Yeah. So what does the author here say about this discipline? How does he talk about it? It's a blessing. Blessed is the man whom you discipline, O Lord. So Barry talked about that from Job. You could also talk about that from the perspective of Hebrews chapter 12. A father that loves his children disciplines them. A father that doesn't love their children doesn't discipline them. So a question for you. This psalmist is looking at discipline. He's looking at suffering as a blessing. How is that possible? Why can he do that? I think this is really important if we're going to understand how we can survive suffering and discipline, is to have the mental state that this psalmist has. What is his state?
He answers it in verse 14, the Lord will not forsake his people. We trust that no matter what, at the end of the day, God will be there for me, no matter what I go through.
Great. So first, he has a belief that the Lord is going to be there for him, despite the fact that this discipline is an undercurrent or maybe an overcurrent of his life. Michael, what were you going to say?
It keeps them from becoming wicked, too, seemingly. That suffering the same end that all the wicked people will eventually face.
Yes. So number 2, discipline brings us to God. Great, which is a blessing. Brian?
He also has faith in God in verse 16. No man can help. It is God who will deliver and has the power to do so. And so his faith, and he knows that God will. And so the reward is that God will be righteous and judge. It's just going to take time.
Yes, so he says the Lord will take care of me, but it's going to take time. But I think there's something more important. Franco?
He also talks about the steadfast love of the Lord and the fact that it seems like he has this eternal perspective of not just looking at what's happening on the earth, but looking forward based on the character of God. That's where he's basing his faith and his hope.
Yeah. So in case you didn't hear Franco, he's basing his thoughts on the steadfast love of the Lord. He's taking an eternal view. He's looking towards heaven as part of this, that suffering now versus the eternal reward is a difference. Crystal?
If you don't have faith in trouble, you don't appreciate the rest. If you don't feel abandoned, you won't appreciate being safe. And if you don't feel like justice is great, you won't appreciate justice.
Yeah, so there's this positive versus negative, that if we don't ever feel danger, how would we feel safety? If we don't feel as though we have been abandoned or been concerned about that, how do we feel and perceive when we are safe from that? That's great. Micah.
So in verse 15, he talks about justice will return in the future. But in 17 through 19, he kind of highlights the fact that where he's looking at what he sees now is he sees God now in the suffering there with him, but he has to keep his eyes on God in order to see that. So he's seeing that he would have had, his soul would have been in the land of silence, that the Lord is holding him up now, and his consolations are cheering him now in his suffering.
Yes, this is fantastic. So what Micah said is, when you look at 17, 18, 19, he references what the Lord has done for him and what the Lord is doing for him. And that then gives him faith and confidence about what? Say it louder, Barry. Gives him confidence about the future. So one of my favorite authors right now and researchers in behavior and psychology is a lady named Angela Duckworth. If you've heard of the book Grit, it's pretty popular. It's been pretty popular the last 5 or 6 years. The book Grit, I highly recommend you read it. If you read any sort of leadership development sort of books, it's really good. The idea is, as she was researching, was trying to understand why are people successful versus unsuccessful. And her research led her to this concept of what we would call grit. Some people might call it resilience. And the number one trait of people who are gritty, that means that when something doesn't go their way, when they fail, they return to the task. They return to the work. They don't just fail and then decide that they're never going to do it again. So this is like Olympic level swimmers who have all of the talent of the rest of the pool. I didn't really mean to make that pun, but the rest of the group that they're with. Yet some of those swimmers who are just as talented as the one who became gold medalists never win a gold medal. Or they, quote, quote, only win one and then they're out. What's the difference between them? They looked across all kinds of things. And what it was is the people who were gritty looked at prior times that they had succeeded and failed and said, well, I've been through this before. This is like that other time, so I know that I can get through this again. She is, by everything I know, she is not a believer in God of any sort. I would assume she is an atheist based on other things she has written. But it's my belief that that is the concept that the psalmist is talking about here. That if you want to have faith that God will take care of you in the future, if you want to have faith that those who are persecuting you, those that he indicts in verses 4 through 7, what you need to do is look back at times prior that he has done that for you and cared for you, and use that to give you reliance on the future. Right? This is the same idea that Paul talks about when he says, we look to the resurrection, because the resurrection is the proof of what we're going to inherit in the future. And so when we are struggling with our faith, when we're struggling with the discipline that we're receiving, when we're struggling with persecution, what we have to do is to not just say, well, we need to have an eternal perspective. That's important, but that feels really far away sometimes. Have you ever been in a trial and thinking towards eternity feels really far away? Really far away. But I can remember what the Lord has done for me yesterday, or last week, or last month. And that makes it tangible. That makes it closer. That makes it something that I can hold on to, that I have experienced, that can give me hope and faith in what the Lord will do for me. Great. So as you've looked through this, I have a question for you. Have you noticed any interesting device in the way the author is writing? He's doing something, and he does it a bunch. If you didn't see it, just look again, first 8-10 verses. See if you pick up on anything. All right, I'll give you a hint now. He does it in verse 1. And then he does it in verse 3. And then he does it in verse 8. Then he does it in verse 9. You see what he's doing? Surely you do. It's not hard. Don't make it too hard.
What was the question?
He's using a literary tool.
Exclamation.
I doubt he was using an exclamation point because I'm not certain that they did that. You're about, are you Living Translation?
Net guy.
Net, all right, I'm just close. So look at verse 1. Now look at verse 3. Does he do anything the same in those two verses? Yeah. But you're chuckling like, Adam, this is really silly to think about. So what Michael said is he repeats words. So in verse 1, God of vengeance, God of vengeance. Then we see it in verse 3, how long, how long? And then 4 through 7, they say, they do, they crush, they. And then in verse 8, he does it again. This one's a little harder. He talks about the dullest of people, and then he calls them fools. That's basically repeating himself again. And then in verse 9, this is the unique one, he does it 3 times. In verse 9, does he not, does he not, does he not? And then as you keep going into 14, forsake and abandon, those are the same things. Then verse 16, he who rises, he who stands, same thing. Verse 22, a stronghold or a refuge. By the way, strongholds and refuges, guess what? They're the same thing. And then in verse 23, we get back again to wipe them out, wipe them out. Michael.
I'd say it's a really good example of like Hebrew parallelism, where like the lines kind of thought line essentially, where this angle and the second line together in this angle, kind of saying the same thing but two different angles.
I don't know anything about Hebrew poetry. So I'm going to assume that you're right, that that's a Hebrew poetry thing. I don't know, like people in English do that too. But why do they do it? What's the point? Why repeat those words? Why repeat those concepts? What's he doing? What'd you say? For emphasis. So if you look through it, what you'll notice, or what I noticed at least, is that almost every time, maybe every time he's doing this, the most emotional thing he's saying, he repeats. God of vengeance, God of vengeance. How long, how long? They pour out their arrogance. They crush your people. They kill the widows. They say. And then, does he not hear? Does he not hear? Does he not hear? And then, as he goes on, he talks about feeling forsaken and abandoned, but that the Lord rises up and stands with him, that he can retreat to a stronghold and a refuge. And then he closes with the strongest, spiciest take of all. Wipe them out. He's emphasizing over and over the emotion that he feels as he's writing this psalm. The thing that he longs for, the thing that he wants, is this vindication that the Lord can provide. And because of that, he is emotional. He is angry. He is sad. He feels alone, but he also feels hope. He feels all of those emotions all at the same time. And that's part of what the repeating does, is it helps you to see that. All right, let's talk about outline. So zoom out for a minute. We've kind of gone big theme, then talk about this one kind of literary device. If you were going to create an outline, do you have thoughts on what sort of outline you could create? How would you break it up? All right, I came up with 2. Go ahead, Micah. Yeah, and I have 2 versions. One has 3 points and one has 5. Like, I'm not looking for,
I have a 5 point.
Great, 5 points.
He starts and ends with the call for justice.
All right.
In between, he has the affliction of the righteous or the indictment of the wicked.
Yes.
And then he has the call back, I guess, to who God is and what God does.
Yep.
Through the consolation of the righteous. And like I said, he finishes off with justice. The call for justice again to close it out.
That's great. So in case you didn't hear Micah, he said, first there are some bookends. Starts with justice, O God of vengeance, shine forth. Ends with this cry for justice. He will bring them back on them their iniquity. He'll wipe them out. That those are justice at the beginning and the end. And in the middle, he has an indictment. I kind of call that out as potentially like 4 through 7. Potentially is that indictment. And then who God is, or about our God. That's call it verses 8 through 15. And then he used a fancy word, consolation. I just said God cares about me. That's like 16 through 19. And then 20 through 23 are this idea of justice. But that's almost exactly what my 5.1 was. If you wanted to be more simplistic than even that, I think a 3.1 could be verses 1 through 7 are crying out against the evil ones. 8 through 19, our Savior and our friend, our God. And then verses 20 through 23, our certainty of God's help. But look at 20 through 23 for me real quick. I think there's something a little bit more there than just certainty of God's help. What else do you see there? What'd you say? An appeal to whose character? Yeah, so he's appealing to God's character. Where do you see that?
Can a wicked ruler be alive with you? Like, basically, can they be alive with you because you're obviously not on the same plane?
So that's interesting that you see that as appealing to God's character. I actually see it as something a little different. So in my notes, what I've called this section 20 through 23 is a lack of confidence amid certainty of God's help. That he's actually almost like, if you think about like a bittersweet, he is concerned. Like, okay, I see all these wicked people and they are doing wicked things and they keep doing wicked things and they keep hurting your people and they keep doing all these things. Well, that can only be true if one thing is true. What's his assessment? That can only be true if what?
If you're aligned with them.
If you're aligned with them. And maybe if you like step back away, like alignment is like you're supporting them. Like you could step back from that a little bit and say like, you're letting it happen, God. Like even if you aren't their ally, you ain't stopping it. They band together against the life of the righteous and condemn the innocent to death. He is concerned about what these people are doing, and he is concerned about the fact that God is letting them do it. David says no. What are you going to say, David?
I'm just not taking this with that for
Okay.
carry on.
Teresa, what were you going to say?
Well, in the middle of these kind of conflicts, and justice does not come swiftly, it is very difficult to cope with it. And so you do have to remind yourself that in the end there will be justice, but we may never see it in our lifetime, and not even in the wicked person's lifetime. They may never be called to justice within our life.
Yes.
And it will only many times be in eternal consequences. And it's frustrating, and you just have to shut your mouth and put your head down and accept it, and that's really difficult.
Yes. So when I talk about this, I call it the issue of intellectual understanding and intellectual knowledge versus emotional understanding and emotional knowledge. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Franco?
I think also so the fact that he comes to this conclusion and humbles himself and abides in God. And I think that is something that's vital for all of us.
Yes.
And even just thinking about any time we go through suffering, just abiding in God and letting God take care of it. Because looking back at even the passage, vengeance is mine, I will repay. We have to trust that he meant what he said, so we're not the ones who are going to take action. God is the one who's going to take action. So I see this humility in him abiding now and finding his refuge in God more than seeing what God has done, we could dwell on that. But what does the relationship happen between him and God? Is that now he abides in God, and God is truly his refuge, and he lives his life through God.
Yeah, so in 20 and 21, he brings forth these issues, these concerns he has, in my view. And then, but, these issues, but the Lord has become my stronghold, my God, the rock of my refuge. So this is the idea. Do you guys have you heard the term cognitive dissonance? Is that cognitive dissonance? So I'm getting some like yeah and some like eh. So just so we're all on the same page, cognitive dissonance is the idea or the ability to hold two competing thoughts in your head at the same time. So an easy example of cognitive dissonance happens whenever Barry goes to Clumpy's in Chattanooga and he gets his chocolate ice cream with candied pecans that he likes. Barry, what are the two competing thoughts that you have in that time?
Whether I should eat it.
Whether I should eat it, and why?
Because it's not that great for you.
Yeah, it's like 30% fat and the rest of it's sugar, all held together by cocoa. But what's the other thought?
It's delicious.
I'll take a second scoop. Yeah. That he's got these two, like that's a silly example, but he has these two competing ideas that are living in his head at the same time. And like we all do that at minimum related to food. Like we fundamentally know that we will live longer and be healthier if we eat our vegetables, yet we don't always eat our vegetables. Well, some of that's just like failing in ourselves, but also some of that is like we're able to hold two thoughts in our head. This is delicious and I like it, and that's okay for me to enjoy it some. This would be really bad for me if I ate a bunch of it, right? But you can also think in a deeper way, like cognitive dissonance is the idea that you can hold two competing thoughts in your brain at the same time. The psalmist, I believe, is doing this because he is saying, I am struggling because I don't see your justice coming to these people. Yet what? Yet I trust. I trust that you're going to resolve this situation. And I would submit that one of the biggest issues that we have as a group when we deal with people, including ourselves, but especially when we're dealing outward with others, that when they are having issues of faith or issues of mental health, that we are not comfortable with the cognitive dissonance that results. If you believe that God is your Savior and you have the hope of eternity, how can you feel that way?
Because I see all this injustice.
Right. But I think we have to get comfortable with the idea that I can struggle to see that God is doing the things that he said he's going to do, while simultaneously having complete faith that he's going to do them. Yeah, Barry.
This is a very Habakkuk type psalm.
Oh.
Because Habakkuk screams out to God and says, how long are you going to make me look at this stuff and this evil that is going on and this injustice is going on? I don't understand. This is just awful. And God answers it very much the same way. Oh, I see it. And I'm going to do something. It'll blow your mind when I do it. You're going to have a hard time trusting what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it.
Right. You have to trust. I mean, that's the key aspect of faith, right? If we did, so this is, it's like the saying that, courage or bravery isn't the absence of fear, right? So some people have the misperception like, well, people that are courageous aren't scared. And anyone who's been in battle will tell you they were terrified. Yet they still did the things that they were supposed to do. That bravery was working through the fear. Why? Well, faith is the same thing. Faith isn't the absence of uncertainty. Because it is believing despite it. Because if it wasn't that way, it wouldn't be called faith. Like that's the fundamental aspect of faith, is that you're believing something, you're hoping for something. You don't have it now.
And you don't have control over it.
Right. Callie?
And it's based on his past, based on his faith. Our faith is a response to his faithfulness, right? So it is seeing what he's done in the past and holding on to that despite the current situation.
Yes.
And holding those two next to each other so that you can have faith that he will resolve this one.
Yes. Yeah, it is using the faithful past to highlight and reinforce the faithful and hopeful future. What other thoughts do you guys have on that? Micah, I'm going to try not to move.
To your point about kind of the cognitive dissonance, I feel like also part of the design of us, of how God made us, is the fact that we struggle with some of these things that we can't fully grasp, and that because we're struggling, we're able to struggle.
Okay. Yeah.
That gives us the opportunity to learn faith and to learn discipline, because we are struggling through those things, because we are wrestling with those things. Those are the things that actually can build our faith, build our trust in God. If we weren't struggling, if we just had it all packed, then we're kind of limiting what God is doing in our lives. But it's okay for us to struggle, because that leads us to faith.
Yes. So what Micah said, in case you couldn't hear him, was that it is the working through the struggle that is our faith, that is the reinforcing and rebuilding aspect of the trial, of the suffering, of the discipline of the Lord. That's why the discipline of the Lord is a blessing, because we can't have what's on the other side of the discipline unless we have the discipline. But you can't like go around the discipline, like you have a treasure map that's got like a second pathway, and get the gift of the discipline without going through it. And he says something pretty striking in verse 13 about this idea. So verse 13, I'll read verse 12. Blessed is the man whom you discipline, O Lord, and whom you teach out of your law, to give him rest from days of trouble until a pit is dug for the wicked. Okay, so he talks about doing this until a pit is dug. So that is a forward thing. He is looking forward to the time when these people are punished and they are put into the pit until the pit is dug for the wicked. But what does he say discipline does for him? What did y'all say?
Allows him to rest.
It gives him rest. If you've been through a trial, if you've been through a great struggle, does it feel restful? So he says, blessed is the man whom you discipline, to give him rest from days of trouble. So he is saying, I know that the justice of the Lord is going to come in the future. But between now and then, I have to live. Between now and then, I have to survive. And the discipline of God is going to give me that. How do we deal with that? We're going to say Chip. Chip. That's true. I didn't call you Dale.
Rest. I want to say, we can read this.
His name is Dale, by the way. That's
This verse that says rest, I think it's important for us to understand, and there are lots of ways that can be understood. And one of them is to have peace. So the rest he is talking about might not be the relief of the situation, but that you have the ability to be at peace with it. Learn how to be content, is what Paul says in the New Testament. I can live with this because I know the ultimate outcome will be. They never go away. I may have this my whole life, but I'm at peace with that. And that's what I think he's teaching here, is that when you understand God's law, and you understand that what God is doing is for a purpose, you can have the ability to be at peace with it. People without that vision struggle to be ever at peace until vengeance happens now, in this time. And then I'm not sure they're really even at peace.
Yeah, I was going to say, even sometimes afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that this idea of giving him rest, yes, I agree with that. And I think it's the idea of like rest easy. Not like you can rest easy in the knowledge that this is going to happen. You can be at peace knowing that vengeance and vindication will come. But I think there's also the idea within it that the discipline of the Lord, its purpose, as 1 Peter would tell us, is to be like a refining fire. To do what? What does the refining fire do?
Purify.
How?
By removing the impurities.
How? So in 1 Peter, when Peter's talking about that, he talks about removing the impurities from gold. Refine us like gold in the fire. The way that happens, and this is true of pretty much any metal that's being refined, you get it as hot as it'll go, and then the dross separates from it, the part that is not the pure metal. And so you take a bar of pig iron, or you take a bar of gold, and you would heat it up, and the gold would separate, it would rise to the top. It takes heat to do that. Without the heat, nothing changes. That is what refines you to a point of purity where you can look forward to the day in the future. Without it, you can't rest easy because you won't make it until then. The discipline of the Lord is the refining fire that creates and enables the hope that we have. Brian?
Yeah, that process, when you think about metals as being hard and tough, that process makes it weak, brittle through that process.
Yeah.
Purification. We are told that we are weak, then we are strong.
Yeah.
We are broken down ourselves and disciplined through that process. How we overcome.
Yeah. So the last thing I'll say about this idea of intellectual versus emotional knowing is that I would just encourage us to realize that faith doesn't mean that we're never having issues or questions. Being faithful does not mean that, but it does mean that we rely on the Lord to work through that. And that we can intellectually be certain of God's salvation for us, yet sometimes still emotionally feel like it's not coming. And our goal isn't to never feel that way. Our goal is to be like the psalmist who says, "But the Lord has become my stronghold and my God, the rock of my refuge." That we can say that despite feeling that way. Thank y'all so much.